In the beginning of this course, we looked at different types of measuring instruments, and then we learnt that the measuring instruments fall into two categories. The direct reading type and the balance type, or sometimes called null balance type. So far the instruments that we learnt, the starting from the permanent magnet moving coil PMMC ammeter to the digital meters, counters, are all direct reading instruments. You connect what you want to measure, you get an output where you directly read the output. In the null balance methods, we do not get a direct output, uh, not even instantaneously when you connect. Right. You will have to do some work. Right. It is like a normal balance, that is why it is known as balance. Right. In a normal balance, what we do is we have two discs pivoted at the middle. Right. We want to put whatever we want to measure, and then we start balancing it with known weights. Right. So, this may be so when the balance occurs, that means the balance needle is exactly at the center, then we know these two weights are balanced, and the unknown weight of the unknown quantity is equal to the known weight of the quantity. That is the principle of balance, and that is what we are going to also apply to electrical engineering. Right. The very first balancing type of electrical apparatus that was developed was the bridges. Right. The bridges, all of us would have learned from our school physics, one bridge at least, the Wheatstone bridge for measurement of resistance. Right. But balancing type of methods have also invented for measurement of voltage, current, and power. Right. This kind of null balance method is known as the potentiometer. As usual, we will look at the potentiometer for DC first, and then we will learn how to develop a potentiometer for measuring AC quantities. Right. The DC potentiometer was developed by a person called Poggendorff in the middle of 1800s. Right. The principle of DC potentiometer. Poggendorff correctly realized that if you have two different metals, right, metal A and metal B with different work functions, right, and we join them together, we will get an EMF proportional to the temperature. That is called the thermo EMF. The two metals themselves called thermocouples. Right. We also learned this a little earlier. So, he wanted to measure and show that his surmise that if you join two metals, you will get a thermocouple. He did not know that it was called thermocouple at the time, but he at least knew that it will generate a voltage proportional to temperature. Unfortunately for him, in the middle 1800s, the voltmeters that were available could not measure anything in the realm of what he was trying to measure. Right. If you know about thermocouples, the voltage, the sensitivity of the thermocouple is few microvolts per degree Celsius. Right. So, he started building apparatus to measure these small voltages. Right. He wanted to expand measuring lower and lower voltages. Right. and then he hit upon this idea of the DC potentiometer. So, all the potentiometers that we have comes from the person called Poggendorff, right. He postulated there are two ways of during the period lifetime of Poggendorff there was only DC, right. So, he postulated if you want to measure a DC voltage, right, not using a voltmeter, but indirectly using the null balance type, then you generate a voltage, right. So, what we do is we generate a voltage and then we have the unknown voltage, I call this as Vx. We connect one of the terminals as common, right, and then in the other terminal we connect an ammeter, right. Now, a very simple circuit theory, if this is V reference, the voltage across the ammeter is V reference minus Vx, Vr minus Vx, and the current through the ammeter Ia is equal to Vr minus Vx divided by Ra, where Ra is the ammeter resistance. Now, if I make this current go to 0 by adjusting Vr, I make a variable voltage, then when current is 0, then Vr must be equal to Vx, right. So, when Ia equal to 0, Vr is equal to Vx or Vx is equal to Vr. Vr is what we are generating. So, we know what is the value of Vr. So, we measure Vx in terms of Vr, right. The ammeter now does not measure current, right. I do not have to measure what is the current, all I have to do is sense that the current is 0, right. So, such a meter which is not intended for measuring current, but for sensing whether the current is 0 had a special name, given a special name in those days. The ammeter itself was called galvanometer, right. So, we have the galvanometer current 0, galvanometer resistance G, these are very sensitive. Galvanometer is nothing but an ammeter, but very sensitive ammeter, and you manufacture it not to measure currents, but to measure whether there is a current or not, 0 current. So, its resolution is normally very high, full scale would be microamperes, right, or even hundreds of nanoamperes, and it may not have a linear scale, it may not even have a scale, it may have only a 0 marker, right. And when we start adjusting Vr, Vr could go higher or lower than Vx, because we are adjusting it, right. So, which means the current can be from left to right or right to left, right, and you must be able to visualize on your galvanometer that there is a current, right. So, the galvanometers are again special instruments with a 0 at the center, right. If the current is on the positive side, on the right side, the galvanometer will deflect on the right side. If current is in the opposite direction, the galvanometer will deflect in the opposite direction. So, you know that your Vr is more or less compared to Vx, and you can adjust accordingly and make the current in the galvanometer 0 and make Vr equal to Vx. Now, Poggendorff also proposed how to make this Vr, right, and in fact that is what we are using even today. He had postulated two methods. In one method, we have a current source feeding a resistor, and then we tap the voltage, obviously based on the resistance that I include between the moving point and the fixed point, the output voltage would vary, right. So, this is known as the fixed current variable resistance DC potentiometer. This is the most popular, right. The other option Poggendorff gave was a variable current, but fixed resistor. Even though this was developed for some times in the 1800s, 1860s and 1870s, the difficulty in making a current source first and then making it variable and making it known, right, saw to it that the variable resistance fixed current source potentiometer becoming the norm of the day. So, even if you want to, if you buy a DC potentiometer as an AC potentiometer today, you would have only the fixed current source variable resistance, because variable resistance is not that difficult to make, right, and also you can make it with very high accuracy, right. Resistances you can make with parts per million accuracy 0.0001%. So, the circuit Poggendorff gave, obviously we do not have a current source, right. In practice we have only a voltage source, the batteries, or maybe you have the AC rectified to DC and then filtered to get a DC voltage, right. And again in the 1800s, Professor Miller has not yet come into the world, and he did not have the Miller current source, right. So, the way that he made the current source is that he took several resistors of same value, I have shown 12 resistors, you can keep 15, you can put 20, right. So, these are all values of same values connected in series. Okay. And bring out the terminals, put one slide wire also of resistance R. If you remember your post office box experiment in physics, right, there we had a slide wire on a meter scale, right, you moved the jockey on the meter scale, something like that. We may have 1 meter wire put into a circle, and then we have a jockey or a slide that slides on it, right, and the entire resistance of the slide wire is also R, right. So, he connected a battery and put two resistances in series called coarse adjustment and fine adjustment, right. Now, he said by adjusting the two resistors in the circuit, the current in the resistive path can be set to a standard value, right. Let us say that we are going to use 100 ohm resistors, or I will say 10 ohm resistor, that is much more common, right. So, R, all R's are 10 ohms, right, and I want a variable voltage here. So, I put so this is plus, this is minus, this is VR. So, I put here I am going to get the voltage only across the slide wire. If I put the position into on this resistor, right, the variable point on that resistor, then I will have the voltage on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resistive drops plus the drop across the slide wire, right. So, I can now vary the voltage between these two terminals, right, by moving this as well as moving this. So, this I will get in terms of 1 R drop, 2 R drop, 3 R drop, 4 R drop. Now, when I want to make a variable voltage, obviously the first thing is I want to go in steps, right. So, I will make this as 0 volts here, 0.1 volt, 0.2 volts, 0.3 volts, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1.0, 1.1, 1.2 and so on. I can add another 5 or 6 resistors, I can go up to even 2 volts, right. If I have 20 resistors, I can have 2 volts. Now, we have already chosen R is equal to 10 ohms. If I want 0.1 volts across 10 ohms, then I need a current of 10 milliampere, right. So, 10 milliampere, 10 ohms, we know the voltage across the resistance is equal to I into R. 10 milliampere in 10 ohms will give me 100 millivolts, which is nothing but 0.1 volt, right. So, I will have 0.1 volt across each. So, if I keep it in this position, I will have 0.5 volts between this and this, and let us say this is 0 and 1000 millimeter, right. I have 1 meter wire, I have put it on a 1 meter scale, and this meter scale is graduated in terms of millimeter. So, I have 1000 millimeters in the meter scale. So, I can say I have 0 here, I have 1 millimeter here, 2 millimeter here, and then when I come here I will have 1000 millimeters. Let me say that at this point it is 434 millimeters, right. Across 1000 millimeters I have 100 millivolts, right. Across 434 millimeters I will have 434. So, this voltage plus minus this voltage will be 434 divided by 1000 into 100, right, because 100 millivolts is across 1000 millimeter, right. So, I am choosing 434 millimeter. So, I will get 2 zeros cancelled, 0.0434 volts, right. So, I already have 0.5 volts, this volt is 0.043 volts. So, here I will get 0.5434 volts, right. Immediately we realize, right, again you will have to look at the scenario in 1800s, right. People had only indicating instruments like PMMC, even the other type of instruments were not developed, right, and there the resolution that you can get is only 1 in 100 or 1 in 200 maximum, right. If you do a lot of jugglery, you can get 1 in 300 using a PMMC meter, right. Now, suddenly you see what is the resolution here? I am getting, this is millivolts, this is hundreds of microvolts, right, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can even add one more digit because if I had 1.2, right. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 in 10 power 6, right. So, this was a real boon in those days, but now I have to see that I send exactly 10 milliampere current, and please remember, if I want to get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 digits, that 10 milliamperes must be 10.0000 milliampere at least, right, 10.10 followed by 4 zeros. Okay. So, if I simply put an ammeter there and then adjust 10 milliamperes, I am not going to get this kind of resolution, right. So, Poggenroff came up with a very nice idea. He said, okay, I can't put an ammeter and make it 10.0000 milliamperes if I want to measure with this kind of resolution, right. But he said, if I had a known source, I could now adjust with that known source 10 milliamperes. For example, let me say I have a 1 volt source, right. Assume that I have 1 volt source, right. It is exactly 1 volt. Today you get this kind of sources, you can buy them, right, up to 6th decimal digit. So, I connect that source. So, this is my across the 1 volt point, I will have to make this to 0, right, or I can put it 0.9 here and make it full scale, it is the same, right. So, I now connected 1 volt. If I have and then I put my galvanometer here in series, right. This is 1 volt source, I call this as standard source ES plus minus. Now, if it is exactly 1 volt between these 2 points, I will have the galvanometer read 0, right. If it is exactly 1 volt here, what does it mean? Each resistor has 100 millivolts. When will each resistor have 100 millivolts? When the current is 10 milliamperes. So, what we do is we connect this standard source, adjust the find resistance and the course resistance, so that I can control the current through the circuit, right. VB can be anything, I really do not care. VB must be greater than the IR drop that I require here. If I require an IR drop of 2.1 volt, VB must be greater than 2.1. So, 3 volts battery is good enough, right. And I adjust these 2 resistors, so that my galvanometer reads 0 at this particular connection, then I am sure that the current is exactly 10.0000 milliamperes, provided I am able to measure the current, the differential current between the voltage generated by the potentiometer and the standard voltage to a very small amount, right, which means the galvanometer sensitivity, right. When I say 0 ampere, right, what is the level of sensitivity that I am having? When I say 0, I really cannot say it is exactly 0, right. If the galvanometer had each division 1 microamperes, right, and it is not reading 1 microampere, all I can say is my current is definitely less than 1 microampere or 0.5 microampere, even 0.5 I could have seen a deflection, right. Or if the galvanometer resolution is 100 nanoampere, I can say my 0 is definitely less than 100 nanoamperes, right. So, by doing so, we can go up to 4th digit or 5th digit, decimal digit, and then ensure that the current is exactly 10.000 milliamperes. This way of ensuring that the current in the variable resistance is the reference current 10 milliamperes or 1 milliampere, whatever you design, right. I can also always say I can make 100 ohm resistors and make my current 1 milliampere, right, or I can make my resistance 1 ohm and make my current 100 milliamperes, right. So, normally you choose not very large current, not very small currents, right. 10 or 1 milliampere is the standard levels of the current here. So, this way of ensuring that the potentiometer is made to generate the reference voltage correctly is known as standardization of the potentiometer, right. The potentiometer itself, though it was developed by Poggendorff, we do not call it as a Poggendorff potentiometer, we give it a name. Anyone knows what is the name of this potentiometer? Anyone knows the name of this potentiometer, this particular potentiometer? You should be knowing, because it is named after you, right. This is called student's type potentiometer. Okay, after the invention of potentiometer by Poggendorff, obviously other people started working on it, and then you had other types of potentiometers, right, which have several advantages over Poggendorff's initial circuit, right, and today there are only 2 or 3 which are still in use for calibration, right. One of them is by 2 people called Kelvin and Varley, right. It is called Kelvin-Varley potentiometer. We will see what it is little later, right, after we understand. So, once we have standardized it, now I can put an unknown source, adjust now. Please remember, during standardization what do we adjust? We adjust these 2 resistors so that the current becomes standardized. Once the potentiometer is standardized, I connect an unknown source, adjust these 2 to get 0 in the galvanometer, right. So, as I said, for that particular value, if these are the positions, then I know the voltage is, the unknown voltage Vx is 0.5434 volts, right. So, this is the measurement phase of the potentiometer, right. Whenever we use a DC potentiometer, we need to do 2 balances, right. The first balance is to make the potentiometer current to be exactly what it has to be, right. That is called standardization. We do it with a standard cell, and we do not adjust the movement on the potentiometer, we adjust the 2 resistors that is in series with the potentiometer circuit to control the current. Once the potentiometer current is set to exact value that it is required, right, 10 milliamperes or 1 milliampere, whatever is the design value, then for measurement you move the 2 variable points, right, to get 0, okay. And if I am standardize a potentiometer, right, I adjust these 2, and then when I go to measurement, I assume that my battery voltage has not changed. So, at least for short periods of time, your battery voltage must be stable. So, you should have a stable battery with a stable voltage, right. And because of that, you cannot say I have balanced my potentiometer today, I will come back tomorrow and take readings, because all of us know batteries voltage decay, right. So, every time you make a measurement, you must ensure that the potentiometer is standardized, right. Of course, once you have standardized, now you can take 2-3 measurements over a period of 30 minutes or 1 hour, right. But if it is going to be more than 30 minutes or 1 hour, you re-standardize, you once again go back standardize it. Now, to do standardization, I simply said we assume that we have a standard cell of 1.000 volts, but how do I create a standard cell, right. The Poggendorff used whatever cell was available to him, the Voltaic cell and things like that, but they were not standard cells, right. And later in 1871 I think, a person by name Daniel developed a voltage standard cell, used more or less the principle of voltaic cell, right. Only thing is, instead of sulfuric acid H2SO4, use zinc sulphate as the electrolyte. Zinc and zinc sulphate, using that, gave him about 1.43 volts or something like that as the standard voltage, but that was not very good. Then came Clark. Clark made another cell with a different mechanism, that also was short lived, right. Then in 1891 Weston, there is a person called Weston, proposed a standard cell, and that cell was so good, for the next 100 years nobody could come with a better cell, right. Today of course we do not use Weston standard cell, we have better way of creating standard voltages, right. But for a very long time, right, as I said 1891 to 1991 or so, right, if you are if you want a standard cell, it was a Weston standard cell. The Weston standard cell had a special shape, so two platinum wires put on a glass tube. Imagine this is a glass tube, right, two glass tubes joined with another glass tube at the middle, right. So this is a tube, right, and then he filled it with cadmium sulphate, that is the electrolyte. On one side he had mercury, and another side he had mercury cadmium amalgam, right. So this is positive, this is negative, so this is full of liquid. So he showed the chemical reactions that take place on the anode and the cathode, and then derived that the voltage would be exactly that is right, 1.018623. Okay. Initially people are taking it as 1.1, not 19, right. Later they realized that it can develop up to this decimal place, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, up to 6th decimal place. Okay. And there are two types of Weston cell, depending upon the solution. If you have saturated cadmium sulphate, right, which means you have more cadmium sulphate than the liquid part of it, right, that is how we make a saturated solution. So if you have a saturated cadmium sulphate, then people found that the long term stability, right, you make a cell today, after 1 year you measure the voltage, it has to be still 1.18623 volts. This is known as the long term stability, is very good, but if you change the temperature, operating temperature of the cell, then the cell voltage started changing. On the other hand, you put an unsaturated solution of cadmium sulphate, the long term stability was bad, but over a small temperature range, right, maybe 20 to 30 degrees centigrade, the voltage did not change much, right. But invariably people decided that they will use a saturated Weston cell, because you get this long term stability and make measurements at a particular temperature, right, so that you do not allow temperature variation for the cell to make. So that was the standard cell that was used, and in the yesteryears the potentiometers had automatically tap off points to get this 1.018623 volts. You do not have to move your dials to get 1.01863 volts. The manufacturer would have taken out those points and then kept ready for you to connect your standard cell and make a standardization of the potentiometer, right. And there is normally there is a on the DC potentiometer you have one switch which you put it on standardization, where the DC standard cell is automatically connected, and you adjust the coarse and fine resistors, standardize, and then go to measurement. Okay. And of course, today there are two types of standard cells that we use. One is based on the band gap reference diode, right. For example, our Zener diodes, right. If you make the current through the Zener diode to be constant, the voltage would be constant, right. If you look at a Zener diode characteristics, so this is V, this is current I Zener. So if I fix the Zener current constant, the voltage is constant. Only when the current varies, voltage varies. There is a small slope, you can see that, right. That is the variation in the Zener. So if you want to buy these kind of reference sources, you can get them in the IC form, right. For example, you want 2.5 volts source, you get LM103 2.5, right, from National Semiconductors, which has a stability of about 100 microvolts. But there are manufacturers like Fluke who make calibration instruments. They will give you a 1 volt band gap reference source, right, which means you will have to apply a power to that, right, and then the output will be exactly 1.000000 volts, 6 zeros. In national calibration laboratories as well as international standard cells, today's standard cell is what is known as the Josephson junction. So this is again when I make a junction, right, PN junction, and make some special characteristics and then irradiate with an external source, right, photo source, then I will get a voltage which is precise, right. So the Josephson junctions are connected in series and then they are irradiated with a particular frequency of microwave, and you get a standard voltage. This is much more stable, much more repeatable, right, and as long as you keep the operating conditions constant, you get a constant voltage. So in the laboratory we use today the electronic standard cell, as we call, right, and in the calibration laboratories where they need much more precision, much more resolution, they use the Josephson standard cell. Now with a potentiometer, whether student potentiometer or otherwise, we can measure only voltage, right, only DC voltage, right. So we can measure only Vx. If I want to measure current, I will have to convert the current into a voltage, right. So if I want to measure a current, what we do is we take a standard resistor, right, send the current, unknown current, through the standard resistor, then across the standard resistor I will get a voltage Ix times Rs, right. So, now I measure this Vx, Vx is equal to Ix times Rs. Once I measure Vx, I know Rs, I can calculate Ix, right, I can calculate Ix. So, if I measure voltage and current in the circuit using the DC potentiometer, I can measure power by simply multiplying voltage and current. Right. Now, we saw that I need to give 0.1 volt steps, and if I put 20 resistors, I will get 2 volts, right. So, the DC potentiometer normally, because I need so much of resolution on this side, is for voltages of few volts, right. We can't even measure few tens of volts. I can't measure a 12 volts battery voltage directly using a DC potentiometer, right. The however, the advantage is when I have small voltages, right, when I have a small voltage of Vx, at the time when I am making measurement, what is the current that I am extracting from Vx? I have standardized my potentiometer, I have adjusted it, I am made the galvanometer read 0 and I am taking a reading. What is the current I am drawing from the unknown source? 0, right. So, any voltage measurements, we said an ideal voltage voltmeter, its internal resistance is infinity, I must not draw any current to make a voltage measurement. So, this is the ideal way of measuring a voltage, right. So, when I use a DC potentiometer, the error due to loading, right, error due to finite current of the voltmeter is 0, right. That is the biggest advantage, and that happens especially at low voltages. If I have 10 millivolts I want to measure, or 100 millivolts I want to measure, and if I start drawing 1 milliampere current, that voltage source will go for a toss, right. But in life I told you, you try to solve one problem, you always invite other. The other problem is that my DC potentiometer is useless even for measurement of my car battery voltage, right, 12 volts it cannot measure. So, but if you want to measure large voltages, then what you do is you step down the large voltage using a potentiometer. So, this is my Vx, I put R 9R, I will get 1/10 of Vx, and this is what I measure using my DC potentiometer, and then I know my input voltage Vx is 10 times what I have measured using my, right. So, if it is a 12 volt battery, I will put a 1/10, I will get 1.2 volts, I can measure 1.2 volts with my DC potentiometer, right. But the moment I use a potential divider, this kind of concoction has a special name called volt ratio box. Right. So, volt ratio box you can get 1/10, 100, 1000, so that you can measure larger DC voltages with the DC potentiometer. The moment I do this, what is the advantage of the potentiometer I lose? Because whether I measure or I do not measure, right, a current will be drawn from Vx, that would be Vx by 10R, right, Vx by 10R. So, I would be loading the unknown source, right, source whose value is unknown. Okay. So, volt ratio box, introduction of the volt ratio box removes that particular advantage of the DC potentiometer. And I talked about a 1 meter wire and then putting 1 millimeter graduations, right. That is not done on a student's type potentiometer. I just brought it to explain to you that it is possible to get up to 3 digits on the last resistance R, right, the slide wire resistance R. In a conventional student's type potentiometer, this would be a 10 turn, right, 10 turn variable resistor. So, the wire itself is wound in a helix of 10 turns, and then there will be a center rod the with a rack and pinion arrangement. So, as I turn the knob the moving point goes on this helix, right. So, you have 10 turns, right. So, which means the first 1 to 10 comes in, and each turn is divided into 100 divisions, right. So, each division will be about 3.6 degrees. Okay. So, you have a 10 turn potentiometer. So, you will not see a 1 meter slide wire if you go on to our lab and then look at the potentiometer. Okay. So, we stop here, we will continue in the next class.